Good evening, everyone. My name is Valeria Postorino Suppan. I am the chair of the Future Leader chapter for CTBUH Florida. I'm very excited to have you all here to learn about this very interesting project, 1212 Aventura, that broke ground last week. Before we start, just a very brief technical remark. We want our webinars to be as interactive as possible, so please send your questions in the Q&A section, not the chat, the Q&A section, and at the end we will address them all. If you have someone specific you want to address them to, just specify it in the question. Just a brief introduction about the Council on 12 Buildings and Urban Habitat. It was founded in 1969. It's a non-profit, multidisciplinary association focused on 12 buildings and sustainable cities. As of this year, 2020, the CTBUH member network includes more than 2 million individuals working from more than 10,000 offices spread across the world. In our audience are developers, engineering, architectural firms, contractors, construction managers, project managers, materials and systems suppliers, associations, governmental associations, universities, and others. Here's some of our members. And as said, the CTBUH has a global presence with 3 offices between Chicago, Singapore, and Venice, Italy. We have 13 chapters, of which the Florida chapter is an active one. It is led by Christoph and Danilo, together with Dean, Marco, and Mindy. And this year we started the Future Leaders group. We created the Future Leaders group that I am chairing together with Santiago, with Hari, Elizabeth, Sergio, and Jorge. CTBUH is really an association that is focused on sharing information and knowledge about construction. It focuses on many different verticals, and networking is definitely one of them. Every year, conferences are organized that involve thousands of people and last approximately 3 to 4 days. News about the next one will be given on the website due to the new interesting situation. A very important initiative is CTBUH Awards. So members of CTBUH are able to submit their projects and compete among 21 categories. For more information, you can go to the website, ctbuh.org or the skyscrapercenter.com. If you want to become a member, just learn a little more about the organization. And to get to know a little more what we're planning to do this year, we are going to organize a similar webinar about the Nativo Tower, the Oaken Tower, the Flatiron, and we're going to organize presentations and panels in collaborations with universities and so experts on the topics that we're going to choose. Without further ado, I want to present our speakers. I'm very grateful for them to be with us and sharing all that they worked on to bring this project to life. We have Bernardo Rieber from Rieber Developments, Fidel Zabik from Arquitectonica, Maxine Lambert from Arquitectonica, and William Caycedo from Bliss and Nyitray. So I leave the stage to Bernardo to start explaining and teaching us what no one better than him can.
Me, I want to introduce myself as a civil engineer and general contractor, but I have shifted to the development side. I mention this because I understand there are a lot of colleagues in the audience, and my role here is to try to put together the best team of experts possible to develop these beautiful projects that will really leave a mark in the community. Now the first question is, why Aventura? I presume that we have in the audience people from all over the world. For those that know South Florida, I need to mention that we're blessed. This city has great weather, a fantastic mix of cultures. Well, in the panel, everybody's from a different country, so that gives you an idea, and we all live here. And Aventura in particular has a very affluent community. And in particular, within the city, we are located in an area called Aventura Health District. We are 1 block away from the major hospital. We are less than a mile away from a major mall, the Aventura Mall. It's visited by 28 million people a year. So that's incredible. So across the street, we have the Gulfstream Park with the largest racetrack in the country. And we're surrounded by several medical buildings as well. So the challenge for us, given these facts regarding the location, was what to offer to the public here in a community that had a very Mediterranean style before. And here is the project. You will see more or closer renderings in a minute. This is like kind of an aerial view that shows a triangle. That's the Aventura Health District. Our project is in the proximity to the viewer on Biscayne Boulevard. Biscayne Boulevard is a major corridor with more than 70,000 cars a day. And as I said, me as the developer have the role of putting together a great team, which will talk to you in a minute, in architectural, structural, sales, to make this happen. We are building this new intersection that says Biscayne exit to be added. We're actually building the street and obtaining all the permits to connect our parcel to the main corridor, Biscayne Boulevard. The county just approved a train station, the Virgin Trains, very close to us. So this is a fantastic thing for the project and to minimize the vehicular transit. Okay, here you have a closer look. We have 3 components. Basically, we have offices on the left side, the glass portion. We have a huge food hall, food, beverage, and entertainment in the entire ground floor. And above, you see residences, mostly for senior citizens, people 65 and over. So this is fantastic, and one of the challenges, how to make all this combined in one building, but with different entrances. So they live together, but they're extremely independent, one from the other. We are Gold LEED certified. We have in total 160 residences, 25,000 square feet of food and beverage in the ground floor. We have a rooftop, and we have 25,000 of offices in the front. This is a typical floor plan of the offices. And here you have a close-up of from the street. So I believe I'm gonna let the experts now speak a little, describe the project. I'm gonna let Arquitectonica exactly mention how they made this dream possible. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. And now Maxine and Fidel are going to show us what the architectural features consist of.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Valeria. We wanted to thank CTBUH for the opportunity, and also thank the client for being so energetic and to kind of inspire us all in a way that is surprising to me. I think it's been a real journey so far, and we're looking forward to where we're going from here. I've been told to curtail my discussion. I'm very interested in South Florida and Aventura and the prospects that exist here, but our focus is more the architecture, and the time is tight. So I could probably talk for too long about the broader context. But speaking about the project more specifically, the client came to us with this intent to create an assisted living, a senior facility, right, that has an assisted and an independent living component, but to do it in a way that is different from how it's typically done, and to make it a place that is interesting and invigorated and youthful and interesting, and to be activated in that way that we usually don't find that assisted living facilities are. So the other components, the office and retail component, add to that, right? And so there's just multiple elements to this that are the things that bring the interest to the main anchor component of the ALF. So one of the thoughts was that the design wants to be something unique and interesting and modern, and that is maybe a bit of a departure from what Aventura has been traditionally about. It's been more of a Mediterranean tiled roof kind of aesthetic, more traditional aesthetic, and this represents, I think, a departure from that. There was the intent to create a place for people to live and socialize within, and to create a place, in a sense, that also has connectivity to the surroundings. We have a property directly to the west of us, which is known as Ivory 214, and is by the same developer. And what we're hoping to do is to create something of a new district here, and part of that is achieved by trying to harmonize the designs and create connectivity, physical connectivity between the two projects. And we do this by means of bridge, pedestrian and vehicular bridge connection, which is seen on the side of the building on 28th Court. So the bridge helps us in that it allows us to share parking between the two projects, and greatly reduce the quantity of parking spaces. So the reduction factor, 165 spaces. What else can I tell you? We're pursuing gold, LEED gold for the project, and that is related to also to the zoning approvals and the FAR of the site, and we were able to achieve additional height and area as a result of compliance with LEED gold. There was also quite a bit of work done with the city on the coordination of the new roadway to the north, which is the facade that we can see here. The main facade of the project faces 214th Street. That's a new extension of roadway that is connecting the existing portion of Aventura to the east of Biscayne Boulevard and connecting it through to greater Miami-Dade to the west. So from this corner office component, traveling along where it says 1212 Aventura and beyond. So what can we tell you about design and materiality? We have the offices located on the busiest frontage, which is Biscayne Boulevard. And this obviously makes sense from a commercial standpoint in terms of visibility, but it's also creating interest and intrigue and something of a buffer for the residential and the balance of the retail and amenity areas beyond. The office space, around 25,000 square feet. That's about 11% of developable area. The offices exist on the 2nd to 4th floor, so basically 3 floors above retail at grade. They're quite tall spaces with floor-to-ceiling glazing, with the idea of promoting visibility out and natural light into the spaces, primarily north-facing, which in our region is good for consistent light quality. On the ground floor, we have 23,000 square feet of retail. It's about 11%, again, of developable. On the facades, we have integrated landscape to increase the greening of the building. Retail is a 20-foot floor-to-floor, again, very tall and open, and trying to encourage this idea of void spaces on the outside and connectivity from exterior to interior, not only visual but physical. There was a notion of this large retail at the left being a public food hall market type of space that will have multiple activities. So maybe cooking or art training, a wine cellar, library, maybe some music, and that activity is also seen and enjoyed at the street level. We have incorporated a separate assisted living entry off of 28th Court, which is on the left-hand side. So it's sort of tucked around behind the retail, but it's close enough that there's some sort of sense of connectivity between what is its own lobby that has some connectivity to the retail zone. We have 2 floors of garage on level 2 and 3, facing 214th Street, and from level 2 and 3, direct walkable access from those garage floors to the office area. The bridge connecting our building to the adjacent building is also on the 3rd floor, and that is something that allows access for both pedestrians and vehicles. The garage facade is a series of vertical fins, and the idea with that is that it's still an open garage in terms of ventilation, but they are meant to create a sense of enclosure, and we've achieved that with aluminum fins, and they're in a panelized systems and then attached to the concrete structure. And the idea was to try to create this element that floats in front and separated somewhat from the balance of the building. And we've done this via inclusion of recesses between the office component and the, not seen here, but on the other end as well. So these sort of vertical sticks create a facade that floats and is capped on top by the amenity deck for the ALF component. Maxine, perhaps you could talk a little more from here.
Yes, so I will talk to you about the senior living facility. So it's starting from level 4 with the amenity deck to level 10 is about 172,000 square feet, which represent approximately 78% of the developable area. We can count, as Bernardo Rieber mentioned it before, 160 rooms in total. So the amenity deck, the amenity deck include a couple activities, and also we can include like a covered porch with fitness and a rooftop garden. The facade feature of the ALF tower is really interesting by the irregularity and the balcony location. It emphasized the rhythm on the facade and also increased the privacy between the different units. The amount of glazing, so here on this rendering, we can see better, we can see better the amenity deck with the pool and also how the room are distributed. So the amount of glazing and the generous ceiling height on the amenity level offer, so it's about 15 feet clear, and it makes the space really bright, open, and is really a nice livable amenity area. So the main idea of this amenity level was to create an active space and force the resident to interact with each other. Let me try to show you a floor plan.
Maxine, if you need some support in changing the screen, just let me know.
Yes, would you mind to go in the next slide? I'm sorry, I don't know why.
Don't worry. Just
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So you can see here the floor plan of the amenity level, which is really interesting, is the amenity space is arranged as a series of pod shapes. So when you arrive in the corridor where the elevator exit are, you arrive kind of at in the center of those pod shapes, and is allowing you to have a clear visibility of what is happening inside and outside, and vice versa. And so the idea was really to have the creative studio, the lounge area, the study room, all interacting with each other. And outside also, you can see that the large area of glazing giving you a nice visibility, and you have a lot of activities also happening on the pool deck, as herb planting, resident gardening, aromatic planting. You have a lot of different sitting area. You have a Japanese rock garden. So the idea was really to make it really really interactive. Sorry. So
just tell me next to change.
Yes, can you please go to the
next?
The
authenticity of live events.
Sorry.
So just let me know when.
If you can, yes, just go to the next one. Thank you. So this is the first ALF level above the amenity deck. So it's level 5. And that's where the assistant unit are starting. But also we still have some amenity activities like the fitness with a covered porch. And we have this roof garden with the track loop and some yoga area. So what is really interesting about this roof garden is accessible to the ALF, but it also will be accessible for the office tenants. So it will be regulated at a certain time of the day with the security access, but like Bernardo Rieber mentioned it earlier, they are kind of, those different uses are kind of living together, but at the same time are still independent. And the roof garden, I think, is a great example of it. So assistant living rooms will be located on this floor, level 5 and level 6. And from level 7 to level 10, we will have independent living room. So what is really particular with this assistant living tower is the fact that the clear ceiling height is 9 feet and 6 inches, which is pretty generous and more than typically provided for this type of use. Also, we have the unit has really large windows and access to balconies. And the idea was to provide a bright and generous unit space where they feel good to live. If you can go to the next one, Valeria, thank you. So this is the last floor, is the rooftop. And this floor is accessible to the public from a single elevator that is on the ground floor, stopping on level 3 garage. And as Fidel mentioned it, on level 3 garage, that's where you have the bridge connecting Ivory to 14, which is the building next to 1212 Aventura. And so this rooftop will have a lounge area. So I think it will be a really nice working space. And also, you know, you will be able to enjoy the view and the Floridan weather. So I think it would be pretty interesting. If you can go to the next one, we can. So on this one, we will kind of wrap up all the different materiality used. So Fidel, if you want to, do you want to?
Sure, that's fine. What we can see here is that these are the flat elevations. So they, you know, there's a lot of glass, and it's and there's also openness. So what we have different elements. So on the upper image, you can see the office component to the left, which is at the extreme left of that is the most commercial exposure on Biscayne Street. So we have a lot of glass there. We have these framed masonry stucco coated elements. Over the top of that is the accessible roof area. And moving further towards the west, the garage is clad in aluminum sticks. Below that is a very high ground floor glazed retail area. And above that, for the ALF component, again, the amenity area is tall, right? And it's also glazed enclosure for the, or predominantly. And then for the tower proper, we have a combination of window wall glazing, and again, the white frame elements, balconies with clear glazing, and we are anticipating using a raked stucco finish on the upper component. So those are the main materials. We could maybe go to the next slide. That's really more of the same. These are the shorter elevations, and I think this and maybe the next are the concluding views that show the most prominent angle from Biscayne Boulevard with the branding imagery in the foreground. And I think that, you know, that concludes the architectural component, and and we probably shouldn't take more time than we have already. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. We do have some questions for you later. And I want to introduce now William Caycedo from BNI Engineers. William, just tell me next and I'll change the slide. Just say next when the slide needs to change. So we don't run into any, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I am William Caycedo. I'm a principal at Bliss and Nyitray and the engineer of record for the project. It is a pleasure for us at BNI to collaborate with Bernardo and Arquitectonica in this exciting and unique project. I also want to thank Valeria and the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitats for the opportunity to talk about our work and some of the structural challenges that were presented to us. Okay, next. The project, as you see, is a mixed-use building, and we have the office building basically on the and tower, and the office building is a 5-story building, and the tower is an 11-story building where most of the mixed-use occupancies occur. The ground level is the 12th story, which is about 20 feet high, presenting some challenges for the structural design. From the 2nd to the 3rd level, we have parking. On the 4th level is the amenities level, where a lot of things are going on. We have the pool, we have raised slabs, we have planted areas with areas where we're placing up to 3 feet of soil, and it's a very interesting place. And from the 5th level to the 10th is basically the tower, the residential tower, which some of the challenges that we have there. So as you see, some of the balconies and the walls that protrude, creating those interesting portions of the building. Next. Okay, the project was designed utilizing Revit. This building information module was essentially important for the preparation of documents. Revit models were continuously uploaded, particularly during the design and the later portion of the design, and created this close relationship between the architect and the engineer for the continuous changes that were going on. Next. The building is basically a pile supported structure. The superstructure consists of cast in place concrete columns supporting basically flat plate post-tension slabs, and a slab on grade at the ground level. On the amenity level, the pool required that we step the slab down and created an interstitial space. One of the challenges for us in South Florida is the resistance to wind forces, and the resistance to lateral loads due to the wind was achieved with basically shear walls in combination with frame action provided by the columns and the PT slabs. Engaging the columns and the slabs in the lateral resistance system created a very efficient structural design and reducing the demand for shear walls. The shear walls were somewhat limited. They're always, we want to minimize the shear walls, and we need to control the flexions in the building. And we limited, at the beginning of the design, we limited the deflections to what we call L over 600, which is basically the height of the building divided by 600. And ASC 7 establishes a limit of L over 400, but we chose to start with L over 600 because the possible changes that generally occur at the beginning, and we were required to prepare a foundation package that was being developed while we were doing design development. And we anticipate that multiple changes include, because the building has not been thoroughly designed, including openings that are generally required in the shear walls, which tend to increase the deflection of the building as we proceed with the design. Interstory deflections are very important because they basically, we have these very tall stories where we have glazing and masonry walls, and the information regarding deflection is generally provided to the glazing manufacturer for the design of connections and the design of the exterior walls. Next. The building, as we see here, is separated by an expansion joint, and the expansion joint allowed for the separation of the two buildings. One was a taller tower, and the other one was a 5-story building. And also there's parking on one side and offices on the other. And the separation of the garage and the office building was important to minimize vibrations that may occur between the two buildings. The two portions can be built generally separate and create a staging and sequencing for construction. Exterior masonry walls and the exterior envelope is supported by shallow foundations, even though the building is supported by piles. What we generally do is we provide a continuous footing supporting these exterior walls that are, again, on grade, not supported by piles, and we generally ride them over the pile caps. So the pile caps are 2 feet below, the top of the pile cap is 2 feet below, and the footing is 1 foot below. And this creates a support for the wall against the column so that we don't have a differential deflection of the two structures that are supported by different means, one by footings and the other one by shallow foundations. Next. The structural design for the project used ETABS. ETABS was used for basically for the analysis of the building, to study drift. It was also used for the design of the shear walls and the design of the columns. For the foundations, we used SAFE. SAFE was utilized for the design of pile caps and piles. And for the post-tension slab and transfer elements, we used RAM concept. Teamwork was very important in this project. We had to work with the owner to try to incorporate owner changes in design, which are common in a project like this, particularly in the early stages of design. We had to prioritize the owner's needs to find solutions to accommodate changes during design and also sometimes during construction, which already sometimes occur when the design has been advanced significantly. We also work with the owner for providing preliminary packages for early pricing and permitting. It was very important for the owner to get the project started, and we were able to work with him to get him early foundation packages so that the permitting could get started while the building was still being designed. The teamwork with the architect was also very important, having effective and constant communication between the engineer and the architect, and the early communication with the landscape architect to determine the amenities features, such as planted locations. Sometimes artificial plants were being used at locations where it could possibly reduce the load demand on the building. Using B&I experience with this type of project, the structural design took a lead in the construction documents. We had to basically be first in design and stay kind of ahead of the game in having a vision of the critical elements in the design path. One of the elements that stay back a little bit, go back, okay. One of the elements, for instance, that we have is we are on the amenity slab, we're using this rib slab system to create steps in the slab. The air-conditioned spaces within the amenity area are circulinear and have kind of a very random profile. And in order to offer the flexibility of design and in construction, the ability to build this in a easy way, this the post-tension slab was set at a certain elevation, and the raised portions of the slab were built using this rib slab, which is basically built with a polyurethane foam and a thin topping slab above. Next. We had to create a foundation package to be issued for permitting while the project was still in design development. Using the early foundation package requires the design to be fairly complete from a structural point of view, and that critical decisions are made which later on cannot be changed. The overall process required a lot of coordination and teamwork with Arquitectonica. The early foundation package allowed the construction to start with pile installation, which is generally a long lead item. The advanced structural drawings required for the foundation permit also allowed the owner to obtain early pricing for the structural shell. Next. Column design in this type of building is generally something that requires a lot of effort. We're going through different spaces, and for instance, it's a mixed-use building. The retail spaces on the ground level generally try to benefit from almost column-free spaces, while the parking levels usually have a rigid spacing requirement due to the parking stalls and the drive aisles. On the amenities level, we go back to trying to keep as column-free as we can, and trying to minimize and stop shear walls so that they probably we change shear walls at the amenities level in size, trying not to get these big walls through these open spaces. And in the residential building, the placement of columns usually needs to be within partitions and walls in order not to have them into usable spaces. The pool design was also a little bit of a challenge. For this project, the pool had this curvilinear shape, which made it challenging for us to frame the pool with beams that would go from column to column. So it was decided that we would provide a slab at the pool bottom level, which is more kind of square in shape, and that would allow that the pool and the pool walls be constructed later on in the shape that is needed, which is basically kind of curvilinear in ways minimizing major forming efforts. Next. We also had to deal with some transfer girders. The building has at the entrance, it was necessary that we provide support for columns, and yet we had to allow at the column entrance. So we had some girders that were supporting 10 stories and spanning 60 feet. This occurred basically at the entrance, adjacent to the speed ramp beyond. Next. An interesting portion of this project was the vehicular pedestrian bridge that connects 1212 Aventura and Ivory 214. This pedestrian bridge basically spans over Northeast 22nd Court and connects the two buildings. Ivory 214, which is now in its completion, is the first phase of this expanding medical habitat. The structure was designed by Bliss and Nyitray in collaboration with IDEA Architect. The first phase includes hotel and offices. The bridge connects the two structures, and it allows for the shared parking, which increases the capacity of the parking, and also at peak times and such other conditions such as special events, the connectivity becomes very important. The bridge was designed using precast I-shaped beams, highway beams, for an onshore construction over the 28th Court. Next. Basically, this presents our information, and it details some of the challenges that were given to us, and we appreciate the time to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, William. So we have a question that needs the support of slides for Fidel and Maxine. And it is about the facade. You actually have a few about the facade. The white elements, what are the white elements, they ask, in the facade? So I guess these white shapes.
So
go ahead, Max.
No, I just wanted to mention that for the office buildings, so as we can see clearly on that view, they are served as sunshade for the pedestrian.
Okay.
So that would be one of the function, especially for the office building.
Okay. Another question: how did you achieve the orange color at the bottom level? Is that the color of the panel or a layer on top of it?
We're not making a distinction there. I think that's something that's come out in the rendering.
Oh, okay.
So the glazing is generally wants to be clearer at the retail zone, and we have a slightly more reflective glass at the upper zone. But I think it's meant to convey the warmth of light at the interiors.
Okay, and I do have a question as well on the facade. Given the winds that we have here in South Florida and the height of glass, I see that the width is not, doesn't pass probably standard width, but could you still stay with aluminum mullions, or you have to go stainless steel? Do you know if the structure behind?
We are in the process of detailing those.
Okay.
So it's not concluded yet, but generally we have some integration of steel into the mullions, aluminum mullions, or we have some amount of backup steel. Yeah, okay. Yeah, reinforced mullions or some backup steel. We're not quite there yet in terms of the finalization of those details.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'll stop sharing the screen so we can all see each other and you guys can see us better. Our remote control decided not to work, but we made it through. I have a question for William. Do the white panels sticking out of the structure affect how the structure receives lateral loads, such as wind loads?
Yes, yes. Obviously, it increases some of the lateral load, but more important to us, and the challenge was how to support these large elements that were coming out of the building, and we are achieving the cantilevers by means of having beams within the slab, and also steel profiles that help to support the wall, particularly during construction. We anticipate that these walls, the separating walls, will be made out of a combination of block and concrete.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Bernardo, when working with the city of Aventura, did you face any challenges? And if so, how did you overcome them?
No, in reality, it's been fantastic. It's made of people that understand the challenges of the developers. They're willing to help at all times. Let's say the regulations of the city are high, but that it plays in our favor, because that's why we have a beautiful city. I live here myself, and I enjoy it. So no, it was more than a pleasure, and I want to continue developing in the city of Aventura, actually.
That's great. That's promising. And how are you planning to deliver the offices? Shell condition?
It's more like a vanilla shell, as you appreciate it, is all glass on one side. So the other side is going to be already painted drywall. Mm-hmm. And since we wanted to maintain the Gold LEED certification, we decided to provide already the air conditioning and basic electrical.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is a generic question, so whomever would like to respond. What had been the main design challenge regarding the multiple uses to be incorporated into the program? Well, it's more probably for Fidel and Maxine and Bernardo. And William more on the structural side, but I guess we start with the architectural and the conceptual side. So
I think that there are uses that don't always find themselves together, and you usually, I don't know if that's accurate, but it seems it is to me, you usually don't find an assisted living or a senior living facility in such an urban environment. That's my thinking anyways. So I think that the challenge was, it's an urban challenge to put those things together. And I think that was the intent, was to create an urban space. So that's how I see it.
Bernardo, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, that's the most important question and the most relevant. Like Fidel said, my vision is the following. First, the offices go fantastic with a mega food hall and marketplace right under, so people don't have to go out for lunch, just take the elevator. Mm-hmm. Now, the residences are mostly independent living. That's a term that involves the new adult, for example, 70 years plus. And nowadays, these people are so alive, they want to interact so much. They're pretty young, 70, 75, 78. So now they have a beautiful building to live in, and also be able to go down, grab a bottle of wine, a piece of cheese, and go up to their apartment and entertain the neighbors that also live there. So that's the majority, like 70% of the apartments is independent living. So only a small portion is assisted living. It's only 52 apartments. And again, we want to deliver an experience that is very different to the current assisted living, where these parents are in an area that is, you know, you have to drive to a lot to get there, and this is more urban. They want to live next to your sons and daughters. So I think it's just fantastic, and it will go well.
Great.
I think from a structural point of view, the different uses of the building created a challenge for us trying to get the vertical element that needed to go through, including columns and shear walls. The columns had to sometimes change size. They had to twist from one floor to the other. Sometimes columns were not lined up with each other, so we had to what we call walking columns, and that was quite a bit of challenge to get in order to fit them within the different spaces and their requirements.
Yeah. I guess the more fun Bernardo and Fidel and Maxine have, the more challenges you, William, have received. So that's always how it goes. And then they also add this, they say, beautiful project. How has COVID-19 affected the start of construction, Bernardo?
Well, this situation occurred right at the piling phase. So it was an activity completely open air. So in terms of construction, we did not stop. As you know, we are selling the offices. So the selling part, of course, slowed down, but we were already, we already sold so many offices that, you know, we can afford to wait a little. But in that sense, we were kind of lucky because it was exactly in the phase of piling.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have any more questions. No, yes, we do. I'm sorry. Bernardo, with the pandemic, did you change or reconsider certain elements of the assisted living units?
Yeah, it's also a very good question. And, you know, I'm the kind of person that always sees the positive side. Like, I am the type of person that says, oh, well, this is good because now I have the time to incorporate the changes into my building. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's good. We are already studying details like, I even heard of paint, like wall paint, that shortens the life of viruses, UV light in the air conditionings, elevators that in which you don't need to touch any button. So,
that's interesting.
So yes, we are incorporating multiple things. And of course, we're alert because now it's exactly the phase in which we can do it. So we're in the process. It's going to be a safe and healthy building.
That's good. That's great to hear, especially if you're planning to move any of your family there. You know, it's a assisted living, but also not unassisted. So independent living, still, you know, when you move into a place while construction is going on, etc., knowing that you're using that type of technology that's new and created on purpose for that makes you, you know, do it with peace of mind. So they ask us, Maxine and Fidel, was there any inspiration behind the white cantilevers sticking out of the structure? Does it in any way affect how the lighting hits the building?
I think the white frames are there to add interest to the facade, right? And they not only exist on the office component, they're scattered through the facade, so they exist also on the assisted and independent living component. I think that, to me, they're they're a bit of a Floridian or Miami iconography in a way, because, and something that Arquitectonica uses a lot, right? It's quite common in our projects. And I think that the interruption of the glazing with those elements, yeah, it'll change, right? It'll create some shadow. And it also, and not only on the inside, but also on the outside. So it'll redirect the light, and it will create interest on the facade throughout the day. So I think it's a benefit both externally and internally, because otherwise you're left with you know, shallow two-dimensionality in the facade. And I think that we have the opportunity of ample sunlight in South Florida, and that's one of the great things that we have here, that it does help to increase three-dimensionality and interest and play on the facade. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. William, did the dead loads and live loads of the parking garage significantly affect the structural analysis of the structure ETABS and the foundations on safe?
Well, there's something that needed to be considered. I think that overall, you know, we're dealing with a post-tension slab, which is generally 8-inch in thickness. So the building is more controlled by dead load, because an 8-inch slab is close to 100 pounds per square foot, and the parking loads and office loads are more in the 40, 50. So the dead load of the building is one of the controlling elements. Even though live load, certainly live load, one of the benefits of live load is under certain circumstances, the code allows that we can reduce live loads, particularly for columns and foundations. We generally don't reduce live loads for the design of the slabs because an incidental load can occur, but for the design of columns and foundations, reducing live loads is generally a practice that benefits a more extreme design.
Okay, thank you. Are you seeing a change in the construction cost with pandemic, Bernardo?
Not really. The only thing that I have seen is that maybe some projects that were about to start, let's say April, May, June, will be delayed until people react. And since we started right before, and so we're not delaying anything, we have a little bit more room to negotiate, in the sense that people are, I mean, subcontractors are less busy. As you know, Miami is a market that is incredible. Absolutely everybody is overloaded. There is no contractor that doesn't have more work than what he can afford. So I wouldn't say price reductions, but more like room to negotiate.
Right. Okay. Can you share any new challenges, ideas, or discoveries for construction architecture you have met in this project that you have not previously encountered? So Fidel, was there anything new that you had never encountered, architecturally speaking, that challenged you for this project?
Probably the bridging between the buildings, I think, was something new and interesting.
Right.
Trying to think what else. Maybe the disconnect between you know, that occurs at the where the volumes are for the amenity, for the ALF amenity area, that created a disconnect between the upper portion and the lower portion. Not that that was so unsolvable, but it was just something that we had to look into. But otherwise, no, I think that you know, structurally it's not completely outlandish, and and it's not super tall. So so from that standpoint, it wasn't that challenging architecturally. No.
Yeah,
But I think the bridge was quite interesting.
When you connect two buildings, you know, with a bridge that is suspended, you clearly need to account for all the relative displacements and what's happening with the wind, and also the materials you're using, and also having full glass facades in South Florida in any case needs attention. So
yes.
I think that's already a challenge, right?
Let me add, Valeria, something to the bridge. The origin of the bridge is the following. You know, building a parking structure is extremely expensive. At a minimum, is around $20,000 per parking space. I mean, that's just a rough number. And also, the buildings don't look that good, of course, with this amount of parking. You know, we cannot have basements in Miami because the water is right there.
Right.
I come from Venezuela, and there you can have 10 stories down. So the buildings look beautiful because they start from the first floor up. Now we have to deal with the parkings, and by connecting the buildings and doing a study of how do you say, probabilidades, the chances of the parkings being occupied in the residential side in the evenings, but in the offices during the day, allow for something called shared parking. So we did a shared parking analysis, and by building the bridge, which is still expensive, it's going to be around $1 million or more, but still we save, I believe it was like 250 parking spaces less that we had to build, because we are using the parkings in the other side. So it was tremendous savings for the environment, for the visual, you know, contamination, for the cost of parking. So, and we're gonna make an icon out of it. We're gonna incorporate some art or something to make it fun. Yeah.
I think that rationalization and optimization is absolutely great. I mean, we're sharing everything, offices, living, why not sharing parking? So I think it was a great idea. And we have one more question. If permanent, do you expect to repurpose floors for additional retail space, or say even medical offices, considering you're in the heart of the medical district, in the heart of the medical district?
Well, we only have 30 offices. We have sold 16. So we believe that we will just sell the rest. And if there is more demand, we hope we will
build
just
another
build
one.
more.
Okay.
When there is demand, you always find the money to invest.
Sure. I mean, if something works, why not do another one? So absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you all, everyone, for participating, for sharing your time with us, and also your work, most of all. And thank you for everyone who is attending, for the ones who submitted questions. We hope to see you during the next webinar. And meanwhile, just stay updated on the website and with our subscription. So thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.